Today's episode is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Anyone making a game wants it to be worth playing, but what about making one worth playing again? A replayable game might feel like just another word for a great game, but it's not. Replayability is an independent characteristic. You can make a great game that's almost worthless to play again. You can make a bad game very replayable. But what actually makes a game replayable? Today, we're taking stock of a bunch of different ways to make a game worth replaying. These aren't the only ways to do it, of course, but a big chunk of any game's replay value falls into a few broad categories: novelty, creativity, and evolution. But there's a flip side to each category. Just as there are things to add, if you want to make a game as replayable as possible, there are things to avoid. Staleness, inhibition, stagnation. But hey, don't worry too much. Even the most replayable games have a little bit of the dark side in them. You know, nobody's perfect. Now, let's go through each category and see how they all help a game become replayable. Oh yeah, but first we gotta pay the bills. Surfshark is a VPN, and you want a VPN. If you use public Wi-Fi, you pretty much need a VPN. VPNs encrypt your sensitive data, like banking info, passwords, photos, videos, and web traffic from prying eyes, like hackers or the man. But Surfshark isn't only great for privacy and security. Do you realize how much streaming TV is out there that you've never heard of? Surfshark can get around region locking. With just a couple clicks, you can make your computer look like it's in dozens of countries around the world. Get ready for Japanese Netflix. You could find the next terrace house before anyone else does. And Surfshark is the only VPN that lets you use one account on an unlimited number of devices. You've got nothing to lose if you just want to try it out. They're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. Head over to the link in the description and enter the code DESIGNDOG for 83% off and an extra month for free. First, and maybe the most straightforward category, is novelty. A game's capacity to provide new content in a second go-around. If replaying the game effectively means playing a totally new game, well, yeah, of course that game's replayable. This falls entirely on the shoulders of developers to deliver enough content and structure it so players don't, or can't, see it all the first time. That's novelty. And some great ways to deliver it are through branching paths, multiple playable character styles, and procedural generation. Branching paths aren't just about dialogue trees and narrative structure. That is a popular option, but branching paths can also be about optional side quests or mission branches. Star Fox 64 is a classic example. Almost every mission has a special side objective that determines the next stage. The work you do in previous stages can affect future ones, like having certain characters appear to help you out. Discovering these paths makes each run stand out from the last, and you can easily get a dozen unique playthroughs before you see all of the content. Games with multiple endings fit here too. It's an easy and effective way to give a compelling reason to go through the same story. Disco Elysium has the most elaborate narrative structure I've seen in a long time, with countless twists and turns big and small that the story can go down based on player choice or just the luck of the dice. A game can also deliver novelty through unique character classes, or character builds with unique mechanics that make the game feel very different on the next playthrough. They can be as simple as long-distance combat classes like mages and archers, versus melee-focused brawlers and knights. Or you could go more granular, skill trees, stat allocation, weapon styles, equipment, and other stuff that lets players customize their character to their heart's content. Some more traditional retro games like Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon provide multiple characters to choose from. Bloodstained has 3 distinct allies to recruit that you can switch to at any time, who all have their own abilities. You can take out those 3 allies yourself to gain new abilities for the main character, or you can just completely ignore them and stick with your default moveset the entire way through the game. That's a bunch of very unique playthroughs by itself, and that's not even counting the branching paths within the levels themselves. Another option is to mix in new content through a flood of environments and items, and procedural generation can be a great way to do it, especially if each run through the game doesn't come close to touching all of the possible options. Roguelites are a whole genre built around rationing out new content through procedural generation. Hades, Spelunky, and FTL all give their players unique challenges by randomizing their dungeons, scenarios, items, and encounters. Each challenge is using the same base game mechanics to make them familiar enough, but every run forces players to adapt based on the unique circumstances they're given. Some runs will provide a bounty of great items, while others will starve you, but each run is always unique enough to be unpredictable and novel, enough to keep you from getting complacent, and that unpredictability makes each of those games supremely replayable. Well, that was easy. Just add more new stuff, right? Wrong. There are opposing forces. Just as there are things to add, there are things to avoid. Things that hurt Novelty and make their games less replayable. Let's call it staleness. Instead of branching paths, a game could have restrictive linearity. Instead of characters with new mechanics, you get characters set in stone. Remember, these aren't necessarily things that will make a game worse, but if you're aiming for replayability, these things could make you miss your mark. Games with single, rigid storylines aren't as easy to replay. Take the Ace Attorney series. The games are amazing, but the story is the story. Once you've played it, you've seen it all. Cinematic action games like Uncharted can be just as limited. Of course, that's by design. The designers of those games weren't aiming for replayability with their more cinematic playstyle. They chose to make a good, but less replayable game. Rigid player character development and a lack of varied optional side quests falls into staleness too. Final Fantasy XIII is infamous for both, with a strict character leveling system that doesn't allow much experimentation, and a notoriously linear hallway environmental design with little side content. Branching narrative structures can also back their way into staleness, with false choices. Options that don't actually go anywhere will disillusion your players once they get wise. And they will get wise. Telltale's adventure games set up major choices that seemed to impact the story, but if you ran through the game again, the secret was revealed. For lots of choices, no matter what road you took, you ended up in the same place. The illusion was shattered, and for a lot of players it retroactively soured the system they enjoyed before. Yes, it's very tough to actually generate the amount of content you need to make satisfying branching narratives, but those are the stakes of the style of game you're making. Players will see through the shortcuts. Okay, category number 2 is creativity. Where novelty comes from the game, creativity comes from the players. It's the home of user-generated content and clockwork systems, games that let players run free with the tools they're given to make their own fun, and then come back again to make something completely different. This is where open world games, simulations, and sandboxes shine. The obvious examples are games focused on user-generated content, Mario Maker, Dreams, Little Big Planet, but also games with good modding support, like Warcraft 3 and Skyrim. The core game is a platform for endless content and infinite replay value. As long as the community is strong, the tools are good, and the servers are still running. The more self-contained flavor of creativity shows up in sandbox games. They give players a wide open space, the freedom to come up with their own goals, and the tools to get the job done. Minecraft and Terraria are the gold standards. Yeah, there are some bosses that the developers have added that you could try taking down, or weapons and armor you could craft, but you could also build your own private super island, make your own farm, program a computer to play Minesweeper. It's all up to you. These games are designed to provide a platform on which to build your own stories, and the randomized world design can accommodate infinite adventures. Other flavors of open world games get their replayability from a clockwork system. Breath of the Wild, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Hitman thrive by building a diorama to tinker with, tear apart, and reconstruct to meet concrete goals in your own non-traditional way. It's rare for a task in these games to have a single solution, or even just a handful of solutions. Their systemic design and wide variety of tools let players think up ways around problems that the devs never imagined. Simulation and management strategy games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, SimCity, and The Sims scratch a similar itch. They set up an end goal of creating a thriving civilization, city, business, or home, but the way you get there is entirely up to you. Since you're blazing your own trail, it's super easy to make your next playthrough completely different. But now let's flip it. Inhibition lives where players don't get the right tools to express themselves. Some games have good clockwork systems, but don't do a great job of encouraging players to explore them. They may have issues with a dominant strategy. If one playstyle is obviously more powerful than others, it saps the fun of coming up with new, creative, and viable ways to solve problems. Metal Gear Solid 5's systemic gameplay creates a ton of ways to approach a task, but the tranquilizer gun is so often the simplest and most effective tool in your toolbox. To fix it, a game might have to add a system like limited resources to help discourage using the same solutions over and over, and get players thinking creatively about their true range of options. Games that rely on user-generated content live and die on the quality of their creation tools to get players to replay. Tools that are limited, difficult to use, or games with bad curation and discovery systems will drag the whole experience down. And now with games that rely on online services to distribute user-generated content, there's a fun new problem. Someone, for any reason or no reason at all, could pull the plug on the services at any time. Mod Nation Racers was a fantastic kart racer, with great support for users to build their own tracks and share them online. But once the servers were pulled, it took the entire game down with it. One decision, made years after release, made a game go from very replayable to nearly unplayable. Open world games get their replay value by providing the space to creatively do things, but the genre is so hard to build because the devs have to fill it with a lot of things to do. Lifeless open worlds undercut the reason to come back. LA Noire has a huge open world that you can explore, but there's literally nothing there to support it. Nothing to really do. Open world games also have to watch out for making their mission designs too rigid. Red Dead Redemption 2 struggles with this. Outside of story missions, you're given this sprawling open world with great freedom. Inside the story missions, you are restricted to do exactly what the game wants you to do. Even though it looks like you're still playing in the game's open world sandbox, if you step out of line, you insta-fail a lot of missions. The clockwork nature of the world in Red Dead's case can even sometimes come back to bite. This conflict between the open world and story is frustrating for many, and makes the story itself more tedious to replay. Okay, third category, evolution. It's the fun of getting better at a game over time, and the hidden depth that a game can hold in waiting until players are ready to reveal it for themselves. This one creates replayability from a give and take, a little from the dedication of its players, and a little from the design of its creators. Top on the list is competitive multiplayer. It's a straightforward way to get players to come back over and over and hone their skills. In nearly every genre, and with a deep enough game, a good multiplayer match will unfold a little differently every time. With the right design, this can make a game replayable forever. Look at Super Smash Bros. Melee and its 20-year run of popularity. As people discovered wave dashing, movement tech, and the rest of the depth hidden in the game, it became a game that rewarded you more the more time you put into it. Rocket League is just soccer with RC cars, but the game's skill ceiling is incredibly high. It's more fundamental than just video games too. Look at how chess has stayed replayable for hundreds of years with the same rule set, and it's more popular now than ever. Games don't have to be as timeless as chess though to be in this category. The evolution of a game's meta over time also makes it more replayable, no matter if it's driven by player skill changing over time or through rule changes the devs make. Hearthstone, Overwatch, and others have historically had great success getting players to come back thanks to the changing meta. Even if you don't love where the game stands right now, a changing meta is a powerful tool for getting people to replay a game. Single-player games can use tools in the evolution category too. High scores and leaderboards fit here, and have been used to make a game more replayable since the arcade era. Get better at the game, prove it by getting a high score, and get public bragging rights, the best kind. Arcade game design added strict time limits, limited lives, brutal difficulty, and short bursts of gameplay, mostly to encourage you to pump quarters in, but it also gives a framework that dovetails well with this style of replayability. For single-player games on home consoles, you can see another type of evolution in difficulty options, challenge modes, and ranking systems. Ranking systems are an approach similar to the arcade style that still works outside of the constraints of the arcade. In a game like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, you'll be graded during each fight, contributing to an overall stage ranking. And as you play, you'll see yourself go further up in rank. But how far can you go? To find out, you'll need to replay the game. Practice, memorize, and master combos. Evade all attack patterns, and learn lots of other nitty-gritty details of the game's balance. And as you learn, the game gives you that immediate feedback through new and higher rankings. Just like high scoreboards, ranking systems made it easy to aspire to and to prove your mastery. Now this last one's a fun one. So far, everything we've talked about has been pretty intentionally placed by the developers, but it doesn't have to be. Communities can build around any game, and will start to poke around at the structure of the game as written. If the game doesn't explicitly give you enough challenge, or if you just want to make your own challenge, you totally can. Speedrunning is a fan-driven gradual mastery of a game, done by replaying it over and over, aiming for goals the developers may have never thought possible. Figuring out how to set up a perfect lap skip in Mario Kart 64, clip through walls in Luigi's Mansion, or warp everywhere in Ocarina of Time is just a different challenge to face, a different skill to master, even if the developers never put it in intentionally. Self-imposed challenges like Nuzlocke in Pokemon, no coin runs in Mario, low-level challenges in RPGs, all push the limits of what a game's depth will allow, and what the game's players are capable of doing. And then there's evolution's flip side too, stagnation. There are plenty of design decisions that can make a game stagnate and be less fun to replay. But just like some elements of evolution can happen by accident, some stagnation can be out of your control. In order to keep the replayability high for a game that relies on evolution, devs have to watch for things that might make players not want to grow, change, mature, and develop their skills over time. A multiplayer-focused game only lives if there's a community to play it. If the player base is small enough to make a match hard to start, the game is toast. Bots can help boost lagging player counts, but it's not a total fix. The bots don't change. For skilled players, they can become easy to predict and to play against. The surprise and adaptation you get when playing against real people is just not there, and that cuts against the original draw of multiplayer. Or, the player base itself could strangle the life out of a game. If the people who stick around against multiplayer are all very high-level players, it's very difficult for new players to stick with a game when they get destroyed repeatedly. Fighting games run into that problem all the time. Even with a thriving player base, a game's strategy has to stay compelling game after game if you want players to come back. If the meta sucks, the game stagnates, and the evolution disappears. Dominant strategies are poison to any competitive multiplayer game, just as much as they hurt single-player games with clockwork systems. One overpowering playstyle can lead to a stale meta, boring matches, and make players flee to something more interesting. Anyone who played Super Smash Bros. Brawl competitively can tell you the horrors of Meta Knight, whose dominance in the competitive scene made the meta very stale very quickly. The game couldn't be patched, and over time Meta Knight caused a fountain of toxicity and then apathy in the Smash community. Then there are things that just directly make the game unpleasant to play over and over again. Anything that makes a game more annoying to play makes it a little less likely someone will stick around long enough to learn and love your deep meta, or your amazing game balance. One way to ferret this out is by thinking about whether a game is speedrun friendly. Speedrunners hate RNG. Heavy RNG can drag on a game. A little randomness and luck can keep things unpredictable, but over-relying on it can take away player agency. You can't get good at the random number generator. So if players feel like their losses boil down to a bad dice roll, that's not a great incentive to keep playing and improving. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival almost always comes down to the sheer luck of a dice roll. The game expects you to replay it to unlock cosmetic rewards and minigames, but the reliance on luck makes it a nightmarish slog to play the first time, let alone to replay. Speedrunners also hate unskippable cutscenes and long tutorials. They're terrible time sinks, and are so easy to avoid. Just give players some kind of out, any out, and it fixes the problem instantly. PS1 era Final Fantasy speedrunning would be way more popular if the runtime wasn't half-forced cutscenes. In general, keep asking yourself, for someone replaying a game, what aren't they replaying it for? Then, figure out ways to reduce those things. Making a game replayable is like tending a garden. Replayability can be sourced from something the developers add, through novelty, from what the players bring through creativity, or from both, through evolution. But remember, replayability has to be cultivated. Staleness, inhibition, and stagnation can act like weeds, and strangle the life out of a replayable game. Leave us a comment below with some of your favorite examples of games that create replayability, and how some have destroyed it. Tend the garden well, and you might make a game that lasts a lifetime.